of a shout outs to different people that are, and things that are sponsoring this. So first of all is the Dock HB. The Dock HB is a co-working space that I happen to own a piece of. There's a price list in the back if anyone's looking for co-working space. It's brand new. It's actually officially opens November 1st, but we're a little bit ahead of that, so pardon the dust in here because we're still trying to get it squared away. I'd also like to give a shout out to Andrew, who is my co-host today. And Andrew is a wonderful guy. He's been a friend of mine for many, many years. He has a certain love of technology, but as with most things with AEON3, this is not about technology. It's about really more philosophy and sociology. It's not so much about the nitty-gritty aspects of technology. Andrew is an artist. He creates all kinds of art. This is going to drive me nuts all night. Excuse me one second. You know what I'm going to do? Hang on. Just pardon me 1 second. There we go. That's better. Is that better? Yeah, it's way better. Okay. So Andrew did the art in the lobby. There's two pieces of art. There's the hammer art over on the one side, and then what would you call it, a mandala on the other side. And he does those types of things. His company is Vagabond Carving, and you can see him on vagabondcarving.com.
Yep, and on Instagram at Vagabond Carving.
Which, Instagram is rocking apparently. See, he has an Instagram account, and I don't. There you go. So AEON3, what is AEON3 about? AEON3 is about the next change in human evolution. So in the first Eon, it went on for thousands, hundreds of thousands of years. Mankind really didn't change. We started off the same. We were the same as animals. We lived and died by the whims of nature. And we just kind of lived short lives, typically fairly brutish. And then somewhere around 3,000, 3,500 years ago, we started writing things down. And that moved us into the second Eon. And once we learned to write things down, everything for us changed. And we're still in that Eon today. The second Eon is, if you think about all of our information technology that we have going on today, that's just better, more efficient tools for writing things down. The third Eon is when we move past that into the next generation of human existence. And it really is when, for my opinion, when we overcome the limitations of nature and move past nature and are no longer under nature's thumb. So that is what AEON3 is about, is how do we go from AEON2 to AEON3 successfully. When we moved from AEON1 to AEON2, it brought a lot of pain and discomfort. When we moved from AEON2 to AEON3, the same is unfortunately true, but hopefully we'll be able to minimize that because knowledge is power. There you go. So what we do is we explore different subjects about upcoming technology that's going to push us towards the third Eon. And tonight we're going to be talking about crime and cybercrime and the kind of the future of crime. I will tell you that this is a very difficult subject. I procrastinated a long time before I got into this today because it is both wonderful and horrible. And I will tell you that tonight I think you'll find that the things I'm going to tell you wonderful and horrible at the same time, which, sorry, that's the way it is. We always tell the truth. So I have notes because this is a complicated subject. So one of the first questions, and the way we're going to do this tonight, I have a short presentation for those of you who are new. I'll do a short presentation, typically takes about 35, 45 minutes. And then we go into a discussion. You can ask questions anytime during the conversation. This is all multi-directional. This is not me talking to you, although it seems like it right now. There is a microphone somewhere. I think Hans is searching for it now. That we need to find. Oh, here it is. Sorry. I should probably check to make sure this is working. There you go. So if you guys have questions, we need you to talk into the microphone so that you can hear yourselves on the speakers, because otherwise the people out there in Facebook land cannot hear you. Okay? Any questions at this point? You guys are very attentive. So why do we commit crime? So some people commit crime out of real need. They really need the stuff that they steal. They need clothing, they need food, they need shelter, and they steal for that reason. Some people commit crimes to get economic gain without working. And that's, to me, a very different thing. One of the interesting questions is, should that carry the same penalty? If you're doing it for economic gain, or if you're doing it because you've been kind of left behind by society. The oldest known model of criminal behavior is called demonology. And what it means, they used to believe that criminal behavior was thought by demons that enter your body, and they actually take over your body. I was possessed by demons and they made me do it. And then in 1876, Caesar Lombroso, who was an Italian criminologist, created the theory of anthropological determinism. And what that means is that criminality is inherited and that people are born criminals. And that you can actually identify a criminal by running them through a test and looking at them. And that's kind of a different thing than, so first you had demonology, and then you had this, people were born criminals. And then Sigmund Freud came along and proposed that crime came from an excessive sense of guilt as a result of an overdeveloped superego. Persons with overdeveloped superegos feel guilty for no reason and want to be punished in order to relieve the guilt. So the reason they do these things is to get caught, so then they can apologize and get the guilt out they have. These are just some of the different ideas on why we commit crimes. For me, it's the natural way, right? If you think about how animals live and how they survive in the natural world, some animals will hunt, other animals will steal the prey, right? And some animals will do both. Just whatever's the most opportunistic way and the cheapest way to get what you need. So it doesn't really matter either way. It's just how it is. It's just the yin and the yang, both sides. So the history of crime. This is a very short history of crime. So the Romans recognized two types of crimes. They had a concept of a manifest and a non-manifest crime. This is a little confusing. A manifest crime is one that you get caught doing. You get caught red-handed. A non-manifest crime is one that no one saw you do. And that's a really important concept that we'll come back to later. A non-manifest crime meant typically that you pay back what you steal. And it really didn't matter either way. You just have to pay back typically 4 times whatever it was you stole. And for most Roman citizens, that was the total thing you got for any kind of crime. For a non-manifest crime, you probably didn't get anything for punishment at all. Because it was hard to say that you did anything wrong because no one saw you, so, oh well. So remember that concept of Roman law, because it'll become important later as we get into this subject. And that's it. So is that, any questions on that so far? We're doing good. So this is a really interesting statistic. This is the number of people that a criminal can rob over time. Hi, by the way. No. There's no rules here, anytime. So if you want to ask a question anytime, just raise your hand and somebody will come along and give you a microphone. That'd be great. So originally, we had kind of petty theft and then a knife. And you could go from like robbing one person to maybe robbing a few people using the knife. And then we developed guns. And now you could rob a bunch of people at once, right? You could do a holdup in a fixed place. That worked pretty well. And then you could rob a train. Train robbery really changed criminal behavior in a huge way. Because you could now have a bunch of people trapped in a metal tube, and you could really just block the exits and hold up everybody in the train. So you could now, a very low number, 1 or 2 people could rob an entire train full of people. Then we had the target hack. I don't know if you guys probably can't see this, but you'll see it's a big number. That affected about 40,000 people were affected directly by the target hack. Their credit cards were compromised, and their credit cards got charges on them. It was quite a hack that was perpetrated. That's the Sony hack, which is about 1 million people. And then this is the Equifax hack, which is about 300 million people. And as of today, we found out that it's not 300 million people, it's more like 1 billion people. Great Britain alone had 683 million records compromised. All just came out today. So when you look at the ability of someone over time to rob people, you can have one person robbing 1 billion people today. Think about that. That's a huge change in criminal behavior and what a criminal can get out of that type of behavior. So another thing that's going on here is the professionalism of cybercrime is skyrocketing. I'm just going to go through these one by one. This is kind of the current state of affairs of what cyber criminals are doing. And there's a lot of them, so I'm just going to tap through these. So digital currencies is one area right now we are seeing some fraud and theft, right? Somebody creates a digital currency and completely lies about the valuation of it. We talked a little bit about that in the cryptocurrency one we were doing. Underground markets like the Silk Road, marketplaces where you can buy criminal gear and activity You can buy criminal programs, you can buy pretty much anything, guns and ammo, whatever you want. You can do that in these underground markets. Private conversations, encryption that eliminates the ability for government or police forces of listening in to crimes. Encrypted blockchains. Wait for this one to rock your world. If I'm a criminal and I want to keep accounting records, that's a big problem for criminals because those records represent something that when police agencies get a hold of them, I can ruin the criminal's life, right? But if it's in a blockchain and it's completely encrypted and only the criminal holds the key, then you can keep records that only you can see. I went to a seminar last Friday, and one of the guys there is a crypto trader, and he had on his neck his thumb drive that has all of his encrypted blockchain, everything he does, and no one can read it except him. Only he has the key to it. Really interesting, yeah. And he can access that from anywhere, and he carries it on his person. He's not doing anything illegal, it's just the way he chooses to carry his money around. That thumb drive on his neck, he estimates is worth about $500,000. Pretty cool.
But then what's the difference between that modern age of crime, it being somewhat virtual, but if somebody's carrying that around their neck, grab your necklace and there you go.
Well, yeah, but only he knows the key. So, he'd have to allow you to get into it, or you'd have to force him to allow you to get into it. But those are going to be a big thing in the future. Broadband connectivity, the ability to connect anything over broadband, right? So now I can run a program that can just sit there and massively hit something over and over and over and over and over and over. That broadband makes that possible. Wi-Fi networking. I can connect to Wi-Fi. Many of you are connected to the Wi-Fi now. Many of you out there on mobile devices connected to us via Wi-Fi. Removable media. This is one of my favorite ones. I've talked about it many times. One of my favorite hacks is going out in the parking lot, throwing a bunch of removable media around. 1 terabyte thumb drives. You pick those up, you're really excited, you take them home, you plug them into your PC. You just transported my criminal code into your PC, either at work or at home. Now I've got you, right? Removable media is terrible, like potentially peer-to-peer networking. So anytime I want to share files, I do it peer-to-peer. This makes it distributed. There's no way the government can interfere with that. The original peer-to-peer network was Napster. You guys probably remember that. Government shut them down. Is that the end of peer-to-peer networking? Peer-to-peer networking is bigger than ever. Many of you use it every day. I'm sure no one here has ever downloaded a movie illegally, ever.
No comment.
Online banking. We've moved more and more and more of our technology and our money and our assets into online banks. This gets back to the stuff we were talking about cryptocurrencies. The bank is the ledger holder that's keeping track of your money. Do you trust them as a ledger holder? Can they maintain security on your private information? Many banks are struggling with this right now. Mobile computing, the ability to have little devices that we carry around with us everywhere that have our personal information and records on them. And as we move between Wi-Fi networks we get connected to, right? Universal connectivity. Standards for connectivity used to be all over the place. We used to have all kinds of them. And now we pretty much have one kind of Ethernet, right? Everything is pretty much Ethernet, and everything connects the same way. Ransomware. I can create a piece of code that I put on your machine or on your servers, and you pay me money, or I delete everything on that server. Pay me by 2 o'clock tomorrow. Most companies pay. You'd think they wouldn't, but normally the ask is very small, so it's cheaper for them to pay and avoid risk. Botnets, DDoS attacks, email phishing, spear phishing, malvertising, potentially unwanted programs, identity theft, social engineering, drive-by downloads, remote administration tools, exploit kits, and tech support scams. This is a tiny set of the tools today that hackers are using. And you guys, on your personal PCs, on your PCs at work, on your servers at work, you're protected against every one of these, right? Just making sure. So that's the challenge. And I'm not even putting the obvious stuff on there. The Equifax hack was patching. They weren't keeping their software patched up to date, which is a huge no-no for corporations and individuals. So it's tough. The professionalism of these criminal organizations and criminal people is rising at a skyrocketing rate, and it's going to keep going. So let's talk a little bit more about the professionalism. We always see it under, hey, what happens? I missed somebody. Let's go back for a second, sorry. Oh. Weird, we lost the slide. So one of the things that was here, which is gone now, was a picture of Robert Albrecht. Does anybody know who Robert Albrecht was? He's a guy that invented a technology called the Silk Road. The Silk Road is an underground marketplace for buying and selling everything, globally. They transfer billions and billions of dollars of assets and money yearly, annually. So the U.S. federal government, wanted to shut down the Silk Road. So in a good old-timey kind of police way, they went after the guy that made it. And they arrested him and they put him in jail. 31 years old, life in prison, no chance for parole. Awesome. He went by a code name, the Dread Pirate Roberts. So what happened with the Dread Pirate Roberts? He's rotting in jail. What happened with the Silk Road? Nothing. It immediately was back up the next day. Because it's not one guy that does that. It's hundreds, if not hundreds of thousands of criminals working together that create the Silk Road. It's a distributed network globally. You cannot shut these things down. There is no off switch. One of my favorite things to say is, where's the off switch to the internet? You don't know what that is. So there's no way to shut it down. Let's see if I missed anything here. So all these different technologies that I pulled up a minute ago are all being used to get at personal information, get at your credit card numbers, get at banking information, get at transactional information. Who knows what one of the biggest hacks was that happened this year? What's a couple that you guys can name? Just shout out. Pick one, anyone.
Apple, Yahoo,
We'll pick one,
Equifax.
not 12.
Apple.
Apple's a good one. Pick another one. Come on, you guys. You all read the paper. I know you do. What's a hack that happened this year that you guys remember? Sony was last year. It was still a good one. Stole some movies. wasn't great for them, but it also wasn't bad. The movies did fine. So, Equifax.
Emails got the
Yep.
passwords that the movies.
A lot of them.
A lot of people don't like using Yahoo, so they use it to put all their junk mail or spam or
Yep.
websites they don't want to have people know that they signed up for.
And I know that all of you all use a different email, a different password and username on Yahoo than you do on everything else, right? Y'all, on every single thing you go to, and somewhere you have this massive library of passwords and usernames, I'm sure, just checking. So, yeah, once I hack one and I get those passwords and usernames and personal identification, odds are I figured out your Wells Fargo password, right? My odds are good. And that's what the Silk Road and those marketplaces are about. I buy information records. So I buy location records about you. I buy geolocation, where you physically are going, that somebody hacked over there from you. I go over there, and then I buy credit card information from somebody else over there, and then I go over here and buy tax income information over there. And then I combine those things together to build a profile of the person or persons I'm trying to hack. See how that works? That's cyber criminal professionalism. Big data, all the things that our large corporations are using, the criminals are using as well. Of course they are. They're criminals. Make sense? Okay, we always underestimate criminals. This is one of my favorite pictures. For those of you who don't know, that is a submarine that was built by the drug cartels. And they build these all the time down in South America, in the jungle. They build them in the jungle. And then they load them full of drugs, and they submerge them and sail them right past the U.S. Coast Guard, and then bring them back up and bring the drugs into America. Unbelievable technology that they're using to do that with. Did you know that the drug cartels in Mexico have their own private encrypted cellular phone network across all the states in Mexico? The government has tried many times to shut it down. They can't. Think about the level of technical sophistication that went into doing this. It's crazy. Mobile cell towers. They built their own phone company and then applied their own encryption to their own phones so they can communicate anytime, anywhere without the government knowing what they're doing. That's outrageous. And very effective. Very effective.
Is that only in Mexico?
Well, as far as we know. Remember that all these things I'm telling you are only things we know about, right? These are things that we've caught them manifest, right? Not non-manifested crime like the Romans would say. This is manifested crime that they've been caught red-handed doing this. And in some cases, even though they're caught red-handed, we can't stop them from doing that. They're still doing it. They're still going through and moving right on. It just rolled right over. Our efforts to slow them down or stop them are a complete failure. Okay, let's talk about the next wave of cybercrime. Because that's what we're really talking about is the future, right? So we don't really care so much about today. Today, there's all those lists of things that are going on. You should be protecting yourself from those things. You can look it up on the internet. But the cost of loading all the things you need to load to protect yourself from all those is probably a little much, right? So you got to be careful on what you're putting online and how you're doing things. Okay, the next wave of cybercrime looks a little more like this. So I watched the last Star Trek film that was just made called Star Trek Beyond last night. Anybody seen that film? It was okay. That's the one with the girl that's painted with white stuff. For those of you who don't remember the titles, because Star Trek names their films like these weird names, like Star Trek XYZ. It's no way to equate it to what the story's about. I know you're a Trek fan. So Star Trek Beyond was it's a pretty good movie. But what's interesting is there's an attack on the Enterprise from what looks like a ship, and then when they get close to it, it blows into a billion pieces. It's not a ship. It's a swarm. And that's what that is. That's a swarm of drones, called a drone swarm. And that's an actual weapon that the US Navy has developed called the Locust Cannon. And it fires that in a shell towards an enemy ship, and then it explodes before it gets near the ship and launches thousands and thousands of little drones that then attack the ship. And in the Enterprise, they had no defense against it at all.
So it's like a missile that launches the drones?
Anyone know what the mic is? Yeah, it's a missile or a shell. The question was, is it a missile that launches towards the drones? And it launches the drones. And it's a missile, either a cruise missile or a shell that can then launch it. And then those can actually go out and attack antenna arrays. They can attack all kinds of things depending on how they program the drones. Pretty cool technology, huh? How do you shoot at that? I don't know. It was interesting in the Star Trek film, they tried shooting at it and that was totally pointless. It didn't do anything. One of the things that you should think about is if the US Navy developed this, how hard would this be for a hacker to develop? Ironically, it'd probably be easier, right? How much do drones cost? Less and less and less every year, right? What if I could control hundreds of thousands of drones? What if I hacked drone control systems? Think of the ransomware things I could do. I could threaten an airliner. I could threaten all kinds of things, and you couldn't stop me, and you'd pay me. That's crimes in the future. Make sense? Drone swarms are something you're all going to have to deal with in the next few years. And it sounds like crazy technology. It's not. It's very effective technology. The other thing to think about, I'm just going to give us a few things to think about. Look at that beautiful piece of art. I'm going to move so you can see it.
It's pretty sweet.
Pretty cool. So that's printed metal. It's called a braided torus. It's made by that guy that made it. And it's beautiful. We love texture. Sure. Just there you go.
On the whole drone thing,
Yeah.
could you disconnect the connection to them? Then it's unlike them to be individually controlled by themselves. They're likely to have a connection to a separate source.
Sure.
Can you someone cut the connection?
No, because one of the things that happens as we move into the future is it's not one technology, it's always multiple technologies. And you guys know how we do this, right? We just give a little artificial intelligence to those drones. And we tell them what to do and then send them on their merry way, right? Once they're programmed and they go, stopping them becomes very difficult. There was a show I watched, it was in the UK, and it was a contest for people that were building technologies to stop drones. And one was like a big cannon with a net. And there was just, and none of them worked. And they were targeting large single drones. You get to something like this, or something like that, sorry, not this, and we don't have a lot of ways to stop it yet. Something like an electromagnetic pulse would stop it, potentially, but there's also repercussions of firing something like an EMP at a swarm of drones, because if the drones are around an airliner, you don't want to do that, right? So it's complicated technology. It's complicated to defeat. We don't really have a good answer yet. Can you pass that down here?
What are they programmed?
Say again, sorry?
What are they programmed in? What language?
Well, I could program drones in almost any language. I could program drones in script. So here, when this was a different company years ago, called McCandless Laboratories, we built one of the first self-driving vehicles ever made. It was a tank, actually, and it drove around a field over there. It was called Nina. Now I navigate anywhere. What was that, 15 years ago? A long time ago. And it used LiDAR and all the stuff that modern self-driving cars do. Once Nina knew what she was supposed to do, she just did it. And she was programmed in a combination of languages. She was programmed in C++. There was some Java code, J2EE engine, enterprise engine was run inside there. But the language doesn't matter. You can program them with almost anything. The AI that's running underneath that depends on the complexity of how smart you need it to be, right? Is it a modern learning machine that will take action and defend itself? Or is it just a mindless automaton doing what it was told? Those are two different types of machines. But imagine each one of these, or one of those, wrong picture, with a little tiny brain inside there that can defeat anything you put at it. So it defends itself. That's the kind of stuff we're going to have to deal with. Smart, technologically driven, criminal things that are designed to outsmart what the police are doing. And the police are at a huge disadvantage here. Cannot express what a disadvantage they're at. Police tend to be like city, state, county, nation, right? Anybody name an international police force? Okay, not a science fiction, a real one. Interpol, right, Interpol. How does Interpol work? They call up the different police forces around the world and say, we need your help. And that doesn't always work well, because police forces don't want to give up information that they have that might compromise national security to another police force from another nation. We really don't have any type of global police force, and neither will we, right? Because if there was, the criminals would move right around that very quickly. Police are at a huge disadvantage here. They approach everything like police do. In the old world, here's a criminal, let's go after that criminal. Let's put Mr. Albrecht in prison for creating a Silk Road. That is not going to work in the future. It's a completely ineffective strategy for defeating crime. Does that make sense? So back to my beautiful Taurus here. Did you have a question?
Yeah, going back to the drone, a swarm, how would that actually play out? In other words, if you wanted to disable a missile launching platform.
Sure. So I might drive the drones down into the missile platform. I don't know much about missile platforms, so as a criminal, I'd have
or
to...
a battle, a aircraft carrier. Aircraft carrier, I can see where that can be.
Right, anything aircraft, you know right away, because they have intakes and outtakes. Anything that has that type, that it can be blocked, right? So just think that way. Anything that's going in or out. And these don't necessarily have to be in the sky. They can be underwater, right? Or in space. On and on and on and on. And they're cheap. That's the part that I really want to get in your heads. Drone swarms are cheap technology. And think about a drone swarm where every drone is an individual bullet that can steer itself. Right? Start thinking like criminals, just for a minute, and then you'll know that's where we're going. Because criminals are thinking like that, right? And the good news is the police are thinking like that too. They're trying to think of new and creative ways to stop these things. And some of them will be successful at stopping and some of them we won't. That's just how these things work. So back to my metal Taurus here. This is made with 3D printing. It's beautiful. We love new technologies that allow us to create and manufacture new things, right? And when everybody thinks about 3D printing, they think this is awesome technology. It'll reduce manufacturing costs. I can be part of the maker revolution. Be nice. Artist. Do you have any comments on 3D printing you can share with us?
It's too slow, too expensive, takes forever. Metal doesn't really work that well. You still have to refine it afterwards.
And those are all
still a long ways away. And
true.
It's not new. It's been around for 30 years.
Those are all true, but they're also based on how much money goes into it. So the more we spend on 3D printing, the faster that technology will accelerate. So you can print something that looks like this, or you can print something that looks like this. This is a functioning 3D printed gun. Or you can, these are all, by the way, functioning 3D printed objects. Or you can build something that looks like this. Or you can build something that looks like this. 3D printing changes everything in weapon law. So we just had the worst mass shooting in US history. It was terrible. It's in Las Vegas. And I've talked about this to a lot of people. A lot of people have wanted to talk to me about this. And I've wanted to talk to people about it. I think we all kind of need to discuss what happened. In my opinion, there's a confluence of things that we knew was going to happen. We all knew this was going to happen. And if you look at where it happened and how it happened, when I was with Ragesh in Las Vegas just a few years ago, we were at the Excalibur Hotel. So for those of you who don't know the layout, here's Mandalay Bay and the MGM Tower. And then here's that open field. And then over here's McCarran Airport. Here's the main strip. And then the Excalibur Hotel is here, literally across the street from the music venue, which is where they do lots of large music venues that have hundreds of thousands of people in an open area. And a long time ago, I said to Raj when we were at Mandalay Bay, that makes me uncomfortable. Because there's a huge group of people in an open area right below a large tower, which just seems like a really bad idea. You could throw a rock out of there and hurt somebody, right? We have to think differently about stuff like that. And when we see something like that that makes us uncomfortable, it means a bad thinking person is looking at that. We may never know why this guy did it, right? His motives are very strange. And it doesn't really matter. We need to be better at catching that type of person. But we're really frustrated with our gun laws right now. A lot of people I've talked to made very strong statements about how we need to get rid of automatic weapons. They're illegal in Las Vegas. We need to control the flow of bullets. We need to control this. No, it won't make any difference. You can walk through an airport with a 3D printer, go where you're going, and make whatever you want. And then use it when you get there, in the future, not right now, to your point.
Also a different skill set.
Absolutely. Well, the continuing professional evolution of cyber criminals is something that, they're getting more complicated, more technically competent. And also imagine a world where on the Silk Road I can download 3D printing plans and machines. I don't even need to know how to do this. I just buy it illegally. Go where I'm going, execute a piece of code. 3 hours later, there's a set of 24 fully automatic weapons. Right? See the problem with this? How do you get around this? How do you stop this? We are not equipped for the next generation of cyber criminals. And that's the point. Okay, next one. Any questions about 3D printing? You guys have a lot about drone swarms. Okay, we can come back to it. The Internet of Things. That's all coming, right? It's going to be great. A refrigerator is going to reorder milk. Finally. This is literally one of the reasons why you're seeing the investment in Whole Foods, right? Because Whole Foods can now be a local delivery point where you can get food delivered from through the Internet of Things. Look at all those things that are on it. There's airplanes and cars and DVRs and printers and forklifts. The travel trailer I don't really understand, but I'm just going to go with that. Headphones, speakers, boats, lighting systems, energy systems, home power systems, all that stuff's going to be connected, right? Of course it is. You know what that looks like to a hacker? Payday. I can attack all that stuff, ransom it, make you pay, go in and figure out how you're moving things around. Simple things like, how much are you spending on electricity? Why are you spending more than me? Do you have an air conditioner? I don't have an air conditioner. Can I steal energy from the guy that's using less and no one will know it? Energy theft is something we haven't even contemplated yet. People with solar panels think, oh, I'm backflowing to the grid. Are you? Or is somebody hooked something in the house next door and you're backflowing to him? And he's stealing from that and then selling that back to the grid. We have no idea how these things work. Actually, almost no one does. The power grid is one of the most accessible things, and everyone knows this in the cyber defense world. It's one of the most vulnerable things, is the word I'm looking for, in the entire Internet of Things, is the power grid. That's a huge problem. Because we haven't thought about it as a cyber attack point. As we move towards the Internet of Things, those are all just new things to hack. It's all just a big payday for them. Make sense? Okay. Any questions on the Internet of Things? We can come back if you guys do. Human augmentation. We talked a lot about this. we're going to do this, right? We're going to make ourselves better. We're going to have AI that's going to help us do this. We're going to improve ourselves. We're going to make ourselves live longer. We're going to do all kinds of great things. Look at this lovely thing. How could that be negative? This is a gal who's lost her arm, who's getting a new cybernetic arm that will allow her to live her life in a normal way. But what if that arm got hacked and beat her to death? Think about it. I don't know if you guys know this, but there was some of you have told this before, so if I say the same story, I apologize. There, at one of the HackerFest conventions, it just happened. These guys rolled in a jello body that looked like one of our senators. That senator has a pacemaker, and they had the same model pacemaker inside of an artificial heart inside the jello body. And then they went and showed how they could hack that pacemaker. And they made it like play songs and play drum beats on it and do all kinds of crazy things because they got into it and they broke through the code. Who would ever think that a hacker would hack a pacemaker? Pacemakers have Wi-Fi connections to allow them to be upgraded with the new versions of software for the pacemaker. That just makes them a hackable point of access, right? Where I can threaten you or threaten somebody else, right? Terrifying. As we build technology into ourselves and make ourselves better, that becomes another hacking point, another attack vector for criminals. And here's the really scary one. This is the 800-pound elephant in the room. We're seeing a huge rise in the ability for us to edit DNA. Editing DNA means that I can make tailor-made viruses that might kill billions. It might kill one race of people. It might kill people in a geographic area. It might not kill them at all. It might just like take away their eyesight. Think about the ability to tailor-make specific genetic material for criminal purposes. That is such a thing we have not yet considered how to stop. I might make something that goes through and says, excuse me one second, my phone's ringing. I have to say decline. I decline, I strenuously decline. So I might make something that is a virus that's tailored specifically towards one person. And it can only affect that one person. I'll use you as a guinea pig. So you just touched your phone. I put that virus on that phone days ago because I knew some point you'd touch it. The ability for espionage and criminal activity and all kinds of stuff. Think how governments will use this technology. It's insane, the number of things that we can do with this. And we have not yet even begun to think about it. But the reason that's a concern is this chart. This is how fast it's becoming cheaper. This is the cost in green of a sequenced genome. And because of CRISPR technology, which most of you have heard about, this is Moore's law, which is the normal accelerated curve for technology. And this is the cost per genome sequencing. That means we're really rapidly understanding how to go in and change genes to create custom-made biological things. And as the cost goes down, it becomes accessible to criminals. That's how this works. And then it winds up on the Silk Road somewhere. Somebody pays a little money for it. They buy a little program. They don't even know anything about this. They just buy a little kit. And they push the buttons on their computer that says it's to do it, because it's not illegal to sell a kit. And off it goes. Make sense? I told you this was going to be a little scary. How you guys feeling?
Depressed.
A little depressed? A little depressed? Okay. So I'm going to read this to you, unless you guys can read it. The street finds its own uses for things. Uses the manufacturers never imagined. The microcassette recorder, originally intended for on-the-jump executive dictation, becomes the revolutionary medium of the Magnetics Act, allowing the covert spread of suppressed political speeches in Poland and China. The beeper and the cellular telephone have become tools in an increasingly competitive market in illicit drugs. Other technological artifacts unexpectedly become means of communication, either through opportunity or necessity. The aerosol can gives birth to the graffiti matrix. Soviet rockers press homemade flexi discs out of used chest x-rays. And that's a quote from William Gibson's book, Burning Chrome. It's very often repeated. The street finds its own uses for things. That's cyber crime in the future. The street taking stuff that was built by in most cases, I have to say, naive computer programmers. And it's not their job to think about what people will do with these things, right? Should we not make CRISPR? Should we not edit genomes? Of course not. We can kill thousands, if not all, disease with that technology. We can solve all kinds of problems with biology and DNA. But the street is going to find new uses for that. That's how this works. Should we not invent 3D printing or try to control it? Of course not. You can't stop it. But the street is going to find new uses for that. Should we not make little micro drones? Of course we should. They're super cool. We do all kinds of things with monitoring, notifications. We can take helicopters out of the sky because they're big and a little bit scary and dangerous. All kinds of great new things we can do. But the street is going to find new uses for that technology. Make sense? And the last thing I just want to tell you guys before we get into the commentary part, because we get near the end, can we stop this from happening? I don't need to tell you guys this. You guys know the answer, right? That's the thing I always like about this. You guys already know the answers. You already knew this was going to happen. You knew something like that shooting in Vegas was going to happen. It was just a matter of time. When we see these technologies, there's part of our brain that instinctively knows this is dangerous. I don't know why yet, but I know it's dangerous. The first time you saw a drone land itself, if that didn't frighten you, it should have. That's weird. That's not something we humans know how to deal with, right? The first time you talk to an AI and it talks back, which I have one in my pocket, or actually it's over there on my phone. It's awesome, but it's terrifying when you start thinking about what it really means. So the question is, what do we do? And that's the third eon coming at you. That's getting to the end of the second eon of information technology. In the third eon, we have to get past this nature control. Think about all these things we're talking about. These are nature control type things. Death, crime, theft, DNA, genome, printing materials, things like that. As long as we're still in the information age, we're still vulnerable to these things. And this transition is going to be difficult. And all these technologies are pushing us to be faster and smarter, think more, right? And learn about these things. And explore new things like AI, digital currencies, 3D printing, stuff like that. Okay, so that's the end of the official presentation part. And it's now time for questions and discussion. Hans is bringing the microphone. Let's go to the closest person because that's easiest.
I was just curious what your YouTube channel is.
The YouTube channel is AEON3. That's it. AEON3.org, I think.
Just,
Just AEON3. AEON3.
Okay, cool, thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Like when you go hiking with friends in the woods, you don't have to be faster than the bear, just faster than your slowest friend.
Uh-huh.
So,
I love that saying.
in the future, in the AEON3, is that going to be the case, or really being more secure than your non-secure neighbor? Criminals go after the lowest hanging fruit.
Yeah, exactly.
But it sounds like it's a situation where they're not going to be going after the lowest hanging fruit when they can get everybody.
But
In some crimes, the lowest hanging fruit they'll go for, but other crimes, they're going to get the low hanging fruit and
the high fruit, you just get everybody.
well.
Yeah, so I'll answer that in the way of a conversation I had earlier today with you. We were having a conversation on this very subject. Carrie, who's my wife sitting back there, for those of you in TV land and those of you who don't know, she was, I told her it's going to be negative, because you can't talk about cybercrime and have it be positive. There's just no positive lining here at this time. I'm hoping that the positive lining is that as we learn about these things, we're more prepared, right? Because being forewarned arms you, right? So you know this stuff is coming now. So don't be surprised. That's, my biggest thing to you. And don't stick out. If you think about, what is Bill Gates thinking about right now? He's a super rich guy. He sticks out. People would like to attack him using these technologies. He knows that. Therefore, he's doing things to make himself difficult to attack. A really good example, I hate to use it, is the terrorist attack in Paris. That was terrible security. They had a guy with a security uniform, no gun, standing in front of a table, and there was no barrier to entry, right? You can't go to an American anything where people gather and not be forced through what we call a man trap, right? There's the first door, and then it narrows down a little hallway to go through, and then there's another door, and then it opens into the venue, right? You have to go through those little barriers because it prevents people from just walking through and gives security time to react in the event someone does what they did in Paris. In Paris, they had a guy with a folding table, and they just walked up, shot him, and walked right through. So that wasn't enough of a deterrent, which is why that place was chosen to be attacked. Understand? We all know this guy in Vegas, and I know I keep talking about this, but it's the most current, recent one that's on everyone's mind. You know, he thought a lot. There's a lot of evidence they're finding that he had studied many, many, many venues and found this one to be the most opportunistic one because of the height of the tower. And he really studied this. Think about how much you could study this just with the tools you have. 3D Google Maps that you could go into. Really think about this in an evil way. You could really figure out the best place in the world to pull this crime off. And he did. Because that stuck out, to your point. They had not done enough to make that a less attractive target. Therefore, they were the target. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think that's, if you make yourself a harder target, that's going to negate a lot of the crimes, but I think there's probably some crimes, like you were talking about Bill Gates, he can make himself harder to attack, but he can't make himself impossible.
Yeah, he can't make himself invulnerable. No one can.
And so, are there crimes in the future that you can't stop no matter what? So, I think I was writing this down. what I was maybe why we haven't had a first contact from another civilization from another planet. Maybe it's inevitable that that you can't stop it.
Absolutely, and that's an interesting point you bring up. And I do want to give the mic to Andrew for a minute because I think you got some questions there.
Because you were talking about
Well, you don't need the one.
biological. You were talking about biological attacks or whatever. So maybe you can't stop it. And that's what's killed off other races on
Yeah,
other
so
planets.
one of the things that's interesting is, you know, for and this is a little bit off the subject, but a little bit still on, that, you know, for a long time we looked out into space. We're like, why don't we find more life out in space? We're very confused on why we don't find technological life. And when we think about technological life, we think about ourselves, right? That's how we think. So, looking at that, think about the first eon of humanity, how long it lasted. Hundreds of thousands of years. This went a long time. Think about how long the second eon is gonna last. And you guys instinctively know this, right? It's coming to an end. You see the rapid acceleration from the time we started writing things down to the time we invented radio, right? Where you can sense it from space, to now. It's been like instantaneous. It's my feeling, and other folks that think like me, that the time from when a creature enters into the second eon to the time they exit the second eon is almost instantaneous. And all of our search for extraterrestrial life is looking for second eon creatures, which is obviously wrong. They just can't stick around that long because of, you know, the rapid acceleration. Ray Kurzweil calls it the law of accelerated returns, which is now called Kurzweil's law. The more you know, because information compounds, right, as you write it down. So the time you can be here as an information-based creature is very, very limited. Make sense? So, interesting point.
Yeah, cool.
Okay. Here comes Hans with the microphone. Just 1 second.
So, I don't know if you've heard how people say if you don't have the right organs to sense something, you might not be aware of it.
Mm-hmm.
So do you think that in the future we might achieve a certain type of technology that will allow us to sense those other life forms that we previously just couldn't detect were there?
Sure. Yeah, and this is a little bit in my personal belief of AEON3, which I don't talk about much, is once we get to that point, I think we'll find there's lots of other creatures that are at that level, but it's not possible to even be there. Let me give you an example. It's one I used a long time ago to explain information storage. So if you think about information storage today, right, we use magnetic stuff or whatever to store things inside of, electronics in that way. And the problem with that is when you turn the power off, all that goes away. So that's volatile storage. So then we have non-volatile storage, which is much slower, and we put that into an electronic medium, but it's still affected by magnetism. What if I could store information in the very fabric of the universe, in this table? Well, it turns out you can do that. So each atom of material is being orbited by subatomic particles. There you go. And I'm not scientific, so if I misstate any of this, and you people on YouTube, be nice, or Facebook, because I'm definitely out of my comfort zone. But you can, if you think about the way the particles move around the atom, they move chaotically. It's not like the little circles and perfect orbits like it looks like in the little nuclear symbol. You guys know what I mean? They move chaotically, but they move in a direction. And if you pass a field over those, you can reverse the direction of those subatomic particles, which means you just created an information storage medium. Get it? If you could read the directions the particles are moving in by the number of particles. So if you had six particles orbiting, you get 6 to the 6th power, which is a lot of bits. Get that? And that's not even getting into quantum, where it can be 1, 0, or in between 1 and 0. So the amount of data that we can store in the physical fabric of the universe is unbelievable. And when you get into quantum computing, which I know is a subject you're interested in, that information can be transmitted across the entire universe instantaneously. That's something we know is true. We don't know what to do with it yet, because we're not in the third eon. Get that? We're still riding on magnetic hard drives and cell phones and mobile devices and thinking about drone swarms, because that's what's in front of us. But out there, we can sense this technology that's there, that's vastly different than this natural plane we live on. It's still part of the universe, but it's a completely not beholden to the mechanics of nature. If anything, it's the other way around. Nature works under this thing's thumb. Make sense? Okay, cool. Can you pass the mic up, Dan?
Back around 1980, 79, I had a conversation with Conrad Schneider, who was one of the developers of the concept of nanotechnology, along with Rex Hurd, so other Jonathan Post, other people. And Schneider brought up the issue of security and crime in the future. And he said the problem is, this may be the ultimate Fermi paradox answer, that as we become more and more technologically sophisticated, the amount of money that it would take for one person to cause an enormous amount of damage, to have even nuclear weapons as the make technology continues to accelerate. So what do you do? And his answer was, the only thing that could possibly work against this scenario would be total information. Total surveillance. Everybody is under surveillance 100% of the time.
Well, interestingly, when you look at what we're moving towards, you guys know we're headed towards that, right? We just call it information privacy, a loss of privacy. That's 100% surveillance all the time, right? We already are moving very quickly towards that. Apple knows everything about you guys right now if you're carrying an iPhone. They know where you physically are. The microphones turn on, and from what I understand, they're recording the audio that's being recorded, transcripting it, putting it in a database. Think about all that information. What are they doing with that?
Nothing, because they can't.
They don't have the technology and data to do something. That's exactly right. They're doing nothing. But you know they will in the future. And that gets to your point. We're moving rapidly towards that thing where there is no privacy. Everyone is under surveillance all the time. And not just like a camera watching you or the police watching you. It's everybody else watching everybody else.
Yeah, AI's watching.
Right. It's a distributed network.
I didn't stop with my conversation with Conrad, because that turned me on to a whole different perspective on things. And I realized it was almost tautologically true. So I looked at how could you do this with minimal harm? And the answer that I came up with was a truth machine.
Mm-hmm.
That is, if you had a technology that was 100% certain or close to it, as far as determining whether or not you were deliberately lying about something, then that could actually function to create, in combination with other technologies, it could actually stop a terrorist, for example, because
Absolutely.
where would the terrorist get a plane ticket? 'Cause,
Yeah, you just walk up to the booth and ask them a question, and you immediately
yeah,
catch
are you a
them.
terrorist?
Yeah.
You know, and right away.
Well, it is funny, you know, when you look at job applications, it says on there, you know, are you a terrorist? Have you ever committed a crime? You know, it says on the job apps. What are you going to say? Yeah. You know, and it's true. And you guys already know this, right? You know how we're going to solve this. We're going to do exactly what he said. Thanks for sharing, Paul. That's awesome. That you're going to have some AI somewhere that's going to do exactly what he just said. Right? It's going to know in real time if you're lying. And it's going to listen to you. So one of the things that we are committed to here at AEON3 is doing a segment on fake news in the future, because we've had several people ask for it. So there will be a segment on fake news in the future. I can't tell you why, because we're going to actually make some technology that will make it more fun to do fake news. So we'll do that. But that's the point, is that if you could tell, if there was a machine that could tell at all times that people are lying, that would be really cool. And Andrew, can you talk a little bit about your idea that you came up with a few years ago? The truth versus sentiment engine? That was you and Brett, right, that came up with that?
It's been a while, sure.
It's like 3 or 4 years ago.
I mean, it's conceptually basically what you're talking about of being able to drive truth versus in effect, like a neutral idea. Having a way to be able to validate almost a binary comparison of black or white, was this truthful or not truthful?
Yeah, so like think about right now, if I was to say, Andrew's wearing a pirate shirt. There's two things there. One, there's a truth statement, and the other one is how many of us believe that Andrew's wearing a pirate shirt. That's sentiment, right? Sentiment is what we all think is true, but it has no bearing on the truth, right? Think about how many times we all make a choice to believe in something that isn't true. But then later we find out, oh, that wasn't so true. If there was an engine, to your point, like truth versus sentiment, it could say the sentiment score of this being true is 99, but the truth score of this actually being true is 0. And think about how many times that would be the number. A lot, right? We tend to be confused, or we tend to choose what we want the truth to be. And a lot of times we do that knowing full well that that's not the truth. And that ties into all these cybercrime things that are going on. You know, we're going to have those types of engines. As we go down the AI path, one of the things that also came up, I think it was Ramesh I was talking to, about what if we invented an AI that just made it impossible to be a criminal? That could outthink the criminals. And before the criminals could do this, these types of things we've been talking about, the AI would be faster than them, right? It would anticipate their move and it would attack them. Now I want you to think about what a terrible idea that is.
Yeah, I was just going to say, that goes back to the quote, the street finds its use for things.
The street finds its use for things. But you can also invent an AI that can outwit creative criminals. Criminals are super creative, right? That's their whole function, is to operate outside of our norms and attack us in ways society didn't expect. And again, this is a famous Raj quote. That's what makes societies move forward, is being attacked like that, right? Learning to defend themselves. And if they don't learn, notice what happens to them. They go away, right? Rome didn't figure out how to communicate over vast distances and get its political bodies to align. They never solved that problem. And this was a problem from the very, very beginning of Rome. So there was no chance that they would ever survive because they never got past that technological barrier and cultural barrier. So that's the point, is that you gotta get past those things, and being attacked helps you figure that out. Okay, there's a couple other hands that I saw go up. Joyce, I saw your hand.
I have a question.
Oh, there you go.
So,
Yes.
in regards to a truth machine, truth is highly subjective. One country's terrorist is another country's freedom fighter. And I think it depends on what point of view you're looking
Perspective.
at the truth from.
And a little bit that's the truth versus sentiment, but it also is, there is no universal truth yet today. But that's an interesting thing, is that we're getting closer to that. When the United States was attacked in a terrorist activity, right? The first big one that happened, we were stunned. We couldn't figure out what was going on. Whose fault was that? We now know it was ours, right? We were so disconnected from what was going on in the rest of the world that we just didn't understand why we were attacked. people on the other side of the planet were jumping up and down and applauding and clapping and stepping on American flags. We were like watching TV going, what the heck is going on over there? That is cultural perspective. But as we build better information systems, right, information travels more quickly, we get more open. See, one of the things these criminals, ironically, are building, along now with a lot of legitimate technologies, is these open technologies that are distributed that can't be interrupted by governments. And that's important, right? We're learning a lot now about what's going on in places in the world where the governments do not want us to know, right? They don't want us to know. Believe me, Catalan right now does not want, or Spain, doesn't want the world to know what's going on in Catalan, right? That's not good press for them. But we're hearing it. You can't stop it anymore, right? Some governments still have that shield. They're still able to perpetrate that kind of dark shield over their citizens. But we know those governments are doing that. We, the people of the world, not just the people of the United States. And we're a little uncomfortable with that. It doesn't seem right anymore. So as we get closer information-wise, and we learn more about each other, I think, and might be a little too naive and optimistic on my part, but I think we'll break down those barriers. And the reason I think that is I look at the United States. I look how people come here and they integrate. They come here as foreigners, they're very foreign. They have a very difficult time. By the third generation, that is gone. Almost without exception. And they're Americans. Their kids have no idea what their parents or grandparents were talking about. Interesting, isn't it? They homogenized in 2 or 3 generations. Gone. And I think that's because of the close proximity of information to Americans. That culture, and they change us too, right? That's a great thing about immigration, is it changes everything. Don't get me off on immigration land, because I will go off on this, but it's a good thing that we live like that in the United States. And I think that will work for the world, but we have to continue to allow people to communicate and not squash that. And I think that's a good thing that's going on. And things like blockchain will drive that. And things like peer-to-peer networking drive that. And things like cyber criminal activity being above governments, right? Equifax didn't get hit, didn't just affect the United States. It affected the whole planet. We're all together in this. This isn't like, I'm going to go off as a criminal and just attack one government. That's governments doing that, right? You don't hear cyber criminals attacking one government. You hear about governments attacking governments. That's kind of an old model that we're all a little bored with. Stop it, Russia, by the way. Stop it. Just stop it. We're done with it. We don't need that anymore. We confuse ourselves enough without other people confusing us. So does that make sense? Okay. Joyce had a question, I think. Then we're good.
So my question is about the crime solving AI thing. So I don't know the title of the movie, but there was some movie where the system detected before
Minority Report.
had the intent to commit the crime.
Yeah, that's Minority Report.
Yeah, so I was wondering about that, what your thought was on how to detect or how would something like this come about when people have kind of rage ideas.
Sure.
But it's in the moment, you continue your day and
So there's a bunch of answers to that. So let me start with the first and most obvious one. As we build brain-machine interfaces, it is inevitable that we will know what people are thinking and be able to connect that to a network, connect that into the information sphere, right? It's inevitable. We can already, through the multiple array retinal chipset and other things like that, we can get into the visual stream and see what people are seeing. We can hear through cochlear implants what they're hearing, on and on and on. It's inevitable at some point we'll cross this technological barrier and be able to read what people are feeling or thinking, or at least their emotional state. So, can you guys pass the mic over there for that?
You've got a machine that does a functional MRI.
Yeah, I'll talk about that in just a minute. Hold that up, because I'm very excited about that. So, once we cross that bridge, it really begs that question, and I got kind of called to the mat today on my using movies as metaphors. But I believe movies are a metaphor for all of us. The reason movies are made is because there's an upcoming technology or cultural revolution that's going to hit us that we're uncomfortable with, and somehow Hollywood taps into that. Writers know that, and the screenplays that get pitched, that get picked up, a lot of times are about some current technological question or philosophical question that we're concerned with the answer. Another one that's really good that was on Film Week, I think this week, on NPR came up was, it was about Blade Runner 2049. How many people in the room have seen Blade Runner 2049? Some of you who've seen it didn't raise your hand, but that's okay. So for those of you who haven't, that's a homework assignment. I've never handed out a homework assignment. See that film. It's relevant. It is dystopian. It is the near-term future that a lot of us are going to live. I think that they really nailed it. They thought a lot about how things will look, how things will feel, the types of relationships we'll have. They really did a good job. It's worth seeing, like Minority Report and a bunch of other ones. But one of the things that came up on Film Week was, last week we talked about that young people today are getting more and more disenfranchised because us older folk are living longer and are more relevant longer. And then I watched a stupid movie today that just last night that cemented it, which was Space Cowboys, where Clint Eastwood and a bunch of old ducks come back, right, and they take over this mission and fly into space, and the young guys are pissed off. That's true. We're living longer now and being able to do things longer, and for young people, they get disenfranchised, and their opportunities are marginalized, and it's difficult for them to penetrate the workforce. So the reason that's relevant is that really started happening about 10, 15 years ago. When that started happening, suddenly we got a flood of young people disenfranchised movies, right? What did we get? We got The Hunger Games. Then right after that, we got the Maze Runner ones, and then the other one, which I can never remember the title. So there's like 7 of them now, where they're fighters and they do combat, and then they break away and form their own young people group. That was a movie reaction to what was going on, where people were starting to feel, for younger generations, there's not as much opportunity as there has been in the past. So we explored that through film, and it was a very successful, especially with a certain age group of people, series of films. I think one of the reasons that the Blade Runner movie didn't do well is because it's at the wrong time. We're kind of beat up right now on the future. It's kind of in our face. It's all of that we just watched, that you just heard me talk about. I really would like some sunny, bright news. And seeing pictures of the future that aren't bright and beautiful isn't fun. So, maybe bad timing. Ironically, when the first movie came out, it was almost the same scenario. In 1982, the computer revolution was coming on. People were afraid for their jobs. There was the whole concept of artificial intelligence, all of it horribly misplaced, but that's where we were going. And the first movie kind of hit that same tone at a time people didn't want to hear it. So it didn't do well in the box office. I think it's ironic that here, all these years later, they kind of hit the same tone again at exactly the same time. We're all feeling exactly the same way. Genius. So when they read us well, they get good reviews. But I use movies a lot to explain things because it really is a common frame of reference that I think is helpful. So I went off on a little tangent there. Ragesh, you raised your hand earlier. Do you have a question? Or?
I actually just wanted to add upon this young lady, what she said about truth. You know, when different countries have their own spectrum of truth, you know, so whose truth is the truth?
Right.
And are we going to a central sort of intelligence where we all abide by one truth? And does that mean the end of countries and borders? And where are we?
If you ask me, I think the answer to that is yes. I think that the definition of the end of the information age is that information changes us, right? And if information is going to change us, that's where it would change us, right? Where we're different, where we disagree. How do we get to a common frame of reference? How do we understand and homogenize our culture where we're not so wildly different? We can't move forward from where we are today without doing that.
But that's already happening.
Of course it
We
is.
can go to any country, anywhere, and it's not that different. Maybe the language is slightly different, the accents are slightly different, but culturally you find bedrocks that are, yep, I've seen that exact same thing.
And think 100 years ago.
Right.
That wasn't there. 100 years ago, like yesterday, that wasn't there.
So who determines what will become the ground?
Yeah, so the question is, who determines what becomes that common ground? Who is right and wrong? And the answer to that is we do.
Yeah, pop culture.
Well, okay, so for example, my mother, she was forced to attend the Nazi camp. And at that time, everyone supported Hitler,
Sure.
right?
Yeah, Man of the Year in
The
1834, I
majority
think.
supported Hitler.
Yeah.
Because the majority supported Hitler, does that make him right?
No, the majority will make tragic errors, right? And there were some parts of that we all liked, right? His building the economy and things that he did, and building the Autobahn and building building the VWs. There were some things that looked great, right? All looked great. But that wasn't the total picture, right? That wasn't the package we were being sold. We were being sold another package that was totally wrong. And some of this comes down right to today, right? Are our governments or our leaders selling us a total package? Is any government leader got a total package anybody likes? Right?
So if it's not democratic, as far as going for the popular vote.
Oh, no, I didn't say that. Hold on, come back to that. Because the reason that happened was because there was no communication system that allowed people to communicate more broadly. The reason that that was able to be perpetrated was you could lie. You could really control those people. You know what I mean?
I wonder though, if there's someone in office right now that didn't get the popular vote, how is it that he is our leader at this time?
So I'll answer that in a really simple answer. So, you know, guys know I'm writing this silly book called 21 that I'm supposed to publish some chapters on that I haven't done, that I will do. One of the things in the book that I talk about is the microphone. Different people in history get the microphone. And it's for all different reasons, right? Always different. Malala, is that her name? She got the microphone because terrible things happened to her. And she's used it very wisely, right? She's used it, she got the Nobel Peace Prize, she's done all kinds of stuff, she's got a new book coming out. She's using that microphone that the world handed her. Other people get the microphone for different reasons. And they use that microphone, and then we later judge, was what they said right or wrong? We're going through a whole cultural question right now on Civil War monuments, right? That's a whole big thing that's going on. It's an interesting question. Some of these people were absolute, devout racists. Should we continue to honor them? That's a strange concept in the modern world. Maybe it's time for that to end. Maybe we should take those statues, put them in a museum, where they can be, you know, with a story about who this person was and what they did and why they're relevant and why they did what they did. Because they did change the world. But without any context, a symbol can be whatever anyone makes of it, right? Like to your point, who says what that means? But that's why these global discussions are going on. That's why this information technology age is so important. That's why openness is important. And this non-stoppable internet thing is important. And all this cybercrime, for all its terror and horror, is important. Because it cuts through all that stuff. It cuts through government's abilities to stop that, ironically. They don't, of course, think that. They think, I'm just trying to steal Equifax records and make $1 billion. But what does that mean to us? It means, hey, the information privacy age is ending. The age of me being able to hide my financial transactions that I don't want people to know about is ending. The age for me to lie to people is probably ending, although we'll see about that in fake news. Because technology is also yin and yang, right? It's doing one thing, it's also trying to counterbalance that. But that's all just part of a process that's going on. And I think it gets to a beautiful end. The trick is to try to make that comfortable transition and not get too distracted by someone holding the microphone right now. Right? One of my favorite stories is, anybody know who Jackson Brown, the artist is, music artist? Yep. Oh, good Lord. Am I that old?
Yes, but I do know.
I feel good. He had a lot of great songs, I thought, and a couple of little stinkers, but he sent his stuff into David Geffen, who's legendary, music producer. He sent in his tape and his picture and all that stuff, and it was on a cassette tape, because that was about the time frame this went in. And David Geffen looked at it and threw it in the trash. It was like, literally in the trash. So he left and went home for the day, and his assistant, back then I think she was called secretary, came in, and she was sitting down at his desk, cleaning up and straightening the papers, and she saw the picture of him in the trash. And he was a devilishly handsome young man. So she pulled that out of the trash, pulled out his tape, went home, listened to it. And the next day, she walked in and put it back on his desk and said, "Sir, I think you should take another listen to this. I listened to it last night. I like this guy. I know you threw it away, but I liked it." He has a career, had a career, because of that lady. And for the briefest of seconds, she was holding the microphone. Right? She was the one holding the microphone, not David Geffen superpower monger of the music industry. That's how it works. We all get the microphone from time to time. What we do with it is up to us. I think some of the people that's why I'm in the statement. If you look at the world leaders right now, which person holding that microphone, the world leader microphone, is saying things that resonate with all of us? Very few. Most of them are speaking to small groups, which is dangerous. That's not the direction the world is headed in. That's not how this works. And they're going to be the constant brunt of attack when they're not talking to us. Does that make sense? I'm always very careful to try to say, to speak to everybody. No opinion is invalid. Everybody's got opinions. And they're all right because they're yours. My opinion is just mine. It's no more valid or less valid. So that's a challenge. It's a huge challenge. And I think as we move forward, it'll get better, I hope, as we all leverage our power in the future to change the systems that happen. But the reason this happened too, in your particular case, because you're talking about, let's say, Donald Trump, is because people exercised their power. They felt like they weren't getting what they wanted. And they're right. The people that voted for Trump are very committed to their vote. And it's not even about Trump. It's about that they were feeling marginalized. And they were. They're right. It's their opinion. It's not something they made up. It's not something that they created to do harm to the rest of the world. They just believe that. And we need to now counterbalance that with, something that's a little different opinion and come to a new level. And then hopefully we'll find a new leader that will get to that level with us. Or not. Make sense? Okay, try not to talk about politics, but I dig it.
Facts evolve to truth, is what you're saying.
Yeah, alternate facts will always evolve to truth, right? Because the truth comes out eventually. That's a really good point. He said alternate facts will eventually lead to truth. You can lie. It'll evolve. Yeah, you can lie all you want. We've been lied to by leaders around the world throughout history all the time. And eventually, we work that out.
Somebody used the term like one man's freedom fighter and another man's terrorist or whatever. I agree with that, but you have to have a common goal. There's some people that don't have a common ultimate goal for the human race or whatever. So one person's truth is going to be different from another person's truth because they have two separate goals. And
some of that too comes down to human rights. We don't have a common framework globally on the simplest of questions. Not just goals of where we want our nation to go, or our people to go, or our race to go, or whatever. We don't have goals about basic human rights. We don't even have a common understanding of that. There's so many things missing. One of the things we talked about, for those of you who were at the AI meeting, was there's a thought process that we should develop a conscience for AIs before we develop advanced AIs, so that they know there's a rule boundary set that they have to live in. Would somebody please explain to me what that rule boundary set is for human beings? If you can't do it for human beings, you certainly can't teach a computer that, right? Because we don't agree.
Honestly, the challenge would be that the artificial intelligence should figure it out on their own. Drive it back up.
It's scary.
There's someone who's trying to do that. Sam Harris has a book called The Moral Landscape.
Yeah.
And I think that's what I was kind of bringing up. Like, you have to have a common goal for those peaks and valleys of the moral landscape. Somebody is never going to try to achieve a certain truth or improve the human race in a certain direction if their goal is different from this other.
Right.
This
Absolutely.
other guy's valley is another guy's peak, and vice versa. And so you have to agree on a common goal where you want the human race to go in the future.
Absolutely, and it's something that I think is a work in progress, and I think we're making a huge amount of progress. Again, if you look where we were just, like you were saying, Andrew, 100 years ago versus where we are now. Wow, have we made progress in 100 years? Wow. Think about the next 100 years. The progress we'll make on answering that very question, on what is our common framework of how we should all live together. In 100 years from now, think about our information technology and how fast it's growing.
Do you wonder, or are you afraid of many leaders like we have today that would reverse our progress?
So the question was, am I worried about leaders reversing our progress? The answer to that, you want to say something?
You can't stop it. It doesn't matter. No matter how many blockages are put up, the general populace is going to find a way around it because technology is faster than any government could possibly put up blockades.
Yeah, and I also want to make the point that he didn't choose to be the leader,
Right.
right?
And
We chose him to be the leader. Whether by popular vote or not, he still was chosen by the Electoral College to be the leader. And you didn't choose him, that's true. But that doesn't negate the fact that he's the president because we were having a moment as the United States of America where we weren't comfortable with the direction we were going. All of us. Some of us were, some of us weren't. But all of us weren't. And we were beginning to get a little more divided. Sometimes you have to go to the negative side to get to the positive side. Right now, we're exploring the divisions within our country. And we're thinking about that, right? In a way we haven't done in a very long time. And there's questions on, did the Russians do this? One of the theories is that the Russians, I think it's more than a theory now, but that's as far as I'm going with it, that the Russians during the election campaign bought ads on Facebook and all the places they could buy ads supporting the KKK. And then they'd support Antifa. And then they'd support the Democratic Party. And then they'd support the Republican Party. And then they'd support anybody that had an alt agenda. Because what they were really exploring was our ability to rip ourselves apart. Of course they were. That's what I do if I was attacking the United States. If I was trying to weaken the United States, that's our Achilles heel. We're the only multinational, multiracial country in the world. Think about that. That's a great way to commit cybercrime. That's not even a crime. Because we hadn't thought about it before. Saying radical stuff to rip us apart on all sides is something politicians have done for a very long time. That's not a new strategy. We just have new tools for them to do it with, right? Are we getting ripped apart? A little bit. What's happening with that? We're not going there. We don't like that. The more you rip us apart, the stronger it makes us. Because we come back around. That's the beauty of communication systems that are open. You can't stop information flow in the United States no matter how hard you try. And no matter how much you tweet on one subject, any side, I'm not picking a side here, right? You still hear everybody else. It's cool. It's one of the greatest things about the information age. We get to choose. And sometimes we choose on a little bit of information, and then later we go, oh, that wasn't such a good choice. And then we'll come back around. And we'll all be good. That part I'm not worried about at all, because our system is open and free. It's people that aren't part of open and free systems that I'm more worried about.
Are
Makes sense?
information bubbles getting stronger, or more information? It's somehow will break those information bubbles. Some people are they're not hearing information from others.
Sure, I heard, and I'll use an alt-left thing because we're bashing a little bit on the alt-right, but I was listening to an alt-left station the other day because I listen to everything. And the alt-left station, there was a caller that called in and said, I think the problem with your radio station, which I won't mention, it's tempting, was that you're only presenting extremely left-wing liberal concepts. And you're not listening to the people on the right. And some of them that are middle right, you don't have a lot to say. And you're as bad as the alt-right because you're being fanatical in your responses, and you should be more moderate. You should listen, right? That's always a good thing, listen. And the announcer said, and then they cut the caller off. There's a caller said that. And the announcer cut the person off and said, I really appreciate you calling in, but I gotta tell you, our side isn't trying to commit genocide. Our side isn't trying to do, and then he started naming off all the alt-right things. And as he started into that diatribe, the volume and timbre of his voice went up and up and up until I swear to God it was like listening to Adolf Hitler. Talking about radical enlightenment and radical liberalism. What the hell is that? Where are we going when we have a society where it's radical intelligence? That's not right. That's not how this will work. You get polarized, it gets messy, and the bubbles will burst. You can't hold a radical position for any length of time because moderate creeps in, right? Reason creeps in if the information is allowed to flow. It can't stand there for long. Short term, sure, but not long. We've gotten way off the subject of cybercrime, haven't we? Jackson.
Coming back to the
I'm not totally sure I understand that. You want to take a swing at that one?
Yeah, to me, that goes back to the truth versus sentiment conversation, because I don't think there is such a black and white, right?
No, I know.
It depends on your point of view. So how can you build, no matter what you're automating, it has to be based on a structure of viability, right? So if you're trying to say, I find this as my outlook, therefore it's true, how far is that going to work? I mean, literally, as soon as I walk out the door, probably won't function that way. So I don't see that.
I think I went into most of the things. So my question was, hypothetically, is she full logic?
Sure.
There's no sentiment, as you're saying, to determine truth. If
Yes,
that
everything's
were-
binary.
Were that possible?
Yeah.
Just like you're saying it's not. If that were true, would we just all start getting to the mindset of only logic, only facts, kind of robotic, that we would lose our humanity?
Yeah, so the question, for those of you who couldn't hear it, was, if we get to a more binary system that's pure logic-based, will we lose our humanity? That's the short argument, right? Okay. So my feeling on that is, if you look at how human beings are, we are not binary. We are not logical. The way that we learn is, the way that we record information is bizarre. There's no like place in your brain where you remember things. It's not stored in a certain spot. It's a combination of chemicals that come together mixed with electricity and electrical pulses that suddenly randomly builds based on relationships to other things that then builds that memory. It's extremely slow, but it's also extremely fuzzy. That's my favorite, type of math term. It's built on the relationships to all the other things. You connect all kinds of stuff to then come up with a single thought. Computers do not work like that. We've never built a computer, no matter how good our math gets, because we don't have the math yet to even think like that. We're missing whole components of science that can take us there. We're starting to understand better how the brain really works underneath, and it is fascinating. And some of that is why we switched from the old empirical AI systems to machine learning systems, right? Because we realized that unless you're forming connections, this is never going to work. You're never going to build a smarter computer. It actually has to do it itself. That's a very human thing, not logical. And many AIs self-destruct because they go down paths that are not the paths the designers intended, and they wind up wiping themselves out. So I think more as we go down that, I don't think that'll be a problem. I think the other problem is the problem. As technology and computers and computer software gets more human, it will cause computers to do things that we hadn't anticipated because of their speed. A silicon-based system versus a neural-based system is a lot faster, a million or millions of times faster. I don't know the exact number, but it's in the lots of zeros faster, right? So it will go through iterations to form connections and come up with ideas faster than we can grasp even what it's doing. So we talked about this in the AI segment. There was a thing on Wall Street where the Wall Street computers, the AIs that they'd done that were doing trading, all suddenly started trading. The US stock market lost like a huge amount of its value in one day, and they shut down all the automatic trading systems because they didn't understand what they were doing. We still don't understand what they were doing. We reset them. What the heck? That's because they were getting towards that being more human-like, and they were making decisions that we didn't understand because we're not fast enough. That, to me, is a much bigger danger than the systems than us becoming more binary and logical. That system is not a system that nature is designed. It's a system humans designed with a very limited knowledge of how nature works. And I think in the future, we'll design things much more organically. Right? I talk about that all the time. Things are going to be more organic, more natural, more the way the universe works, and less the way humans dream them up. But there's some pitfalls in there that not only in the cyber crime area, but in lots of areas where technology will take us in ways and outstrip us, where we're trying to catch up with, and we'll flip the off switch if we can to figure out what it just did. And luckily in the Wall Street trading engines, we were able to shut them off. But it took us half a day, and where'd all that money go? Gone.
Yeah, I just wanted to comment that there is a kind of paradigm in the real world, as you all have been talking about, and that is in the Scientology organization. I'm not in the Scientology, just to let you know. But I have noticed that I had a number of friends and acquaintances who did go through came out the other side. And they were willing to discuss what they had experienced. And I said that for the first year, they did really, really well under Scientology. Their life improved drastically. And they took care of a lot of problems that had nagged them for decades. You know, they went away. And this is all based on using something called the E-meter, which is it's a galvanic skin response measurement. And with that E-meter, an auditor could ask you, did you live up to your goal of cutting your smoking by half this past week? You got it, or gal would, dither, you know. And the guy would say, I need a decision. I need a decision that you're going to cut it by half next week. And I don't believe you because the meter says you're lying.
Right.
You don't have that intention. Of course, you can take that and extrapolate it straight into a mind-controlled scenario.
Sure.
Some people would say that would include Scientology.
And a lot of other things.
I'll leave that for the lawsuit people. But you could use that in combination of force and drugs to basically create a Manchurian candidate. We have that technology.
Well, this will get easier. It'll get easier in the future to do the Manchurian candidate kind of problem, because as we integrate technology into us, right, and in our brains, you know, the ability for a hack, that's just new things to hack, right? There's always that hacking problem that people can get in the E-meter, the Scientology thing. You know, one of the things that is very apparent to me is that we all have things we're uncomfortable with about ourselves, and I talk a lot about Ragesh, but Ragesh talks about this as intention. You know, intention sometimes is you decide what you're going to do, and you focus your brain on that, and you can solve these problems. And I was looking on a meetup site, and some of the most popular sites that get thousands of people signing up for their groups are things like Reiki and self-meditation and self-healing and self-improvement. And in short order, I think those things are very, very helpful. We have a huge ability to control our mind and make our lives better. And I think in the short term, like you're saying, anything that you focus on, especially with having a person who's noting are you improving or not, which they do a good job with that, you're going to have a short-term benefit. Short term. Is that a long-term way of life? Can you maintain that? Is a different question. And that's something that is where there's an opportunity for human augmentation, integration with technology, and that's going to lead to hacking, right? That is a direct equation, because we want that. We want the ability to control our minds. We want the ability to improve ourselves and be better people. But there's a limit on how far we can go with that before we need to actually improve ourselves. And that opens up the door that we're going to all have to deal with. And that's the point of this session, is that you're going to have to understand these technologies. They're going to be upon you. They're coming like a freight train. A lot of the ones I think that I put up that are already old news, you don't know about. And some of the new ones are intriguing. And those aren't the ones the criminals are going to do. You know how I know that?
Because you know it.
Because I know it. Because I read about them on the internet. That's not the future. The future is stuff we don't know. They're going to come at us in new and creative and inventive ways that we're not ready for. And, you know, as bad as that is, God bless them, because that's going to make us stronger. That's going to make us rethink the way we do things. And, you know, that challenge, that push in one direction, makes us push back in another direction. And it's a brave new world. Things are going to change very rapidly here at the end of this. So what I want to do is I want to wrap up this because we're at our time limit, and then we can continue on once we're off the Facebook Live thing, but we're hitting our time limit now. So I really want to thank everybody for coming in. It was an awesome session. You guys are really good. You're always talkative, which I love. Thanks, Andrew, for being my co-host again. It's awesome seeing you. And hopefully you'll all steer clear of cybercrime and your lives will be wonderful. So thanks again for coming to AEON3, and I look forward to seeing you guys next week. Bye.